Hello everyone, it's Gina from orchidandopal.com. Today I'm back with an earring tutorial that matches the Terrarium pendant that I shared last year. Some of you may remember the Orchid Oasis collection that I put together with Eureka Crystal Beads. And one of the projects from that collection was a pendant that matches the second to the left pair of earrings down below and used the larger octagonal stone, the 13 by 18 millimeter size. But the collection also came with some smaller octagonal stones that match it in the 10 by 14 millimeter size, and I'd been asked along the way to come up with a tutorial for some earrings that would go along with that pendant, and I'm happy to say that now I have one to share. If you'd like to, you can still get your hands on that collection. I will link to that right down below, and I will also have a full list of materials and links to all of the materials below the video too. You're welcome to pick up these items in all different sorts of colors and have fun coming up with your own scheme. But I will have the colors listed for all of these pieces in the corresponding blog post, and that'll be linked down below too. We're going to be creating a bezel for these octagonal stones using some SuperDuos, some Demi round seed beads, 3mm fire polish, and some 2.8mm Miyuki drops. To make each earring, you'll want approximately 4 to 5 feet of beading thread. I'll be using the 6-pound test Fireline, and I'll be using a size 11 beading needle. You'll also want to have a couple of jump rings and earring findings, and of course your tools such as scissors and jewelry pliers. Once you have all your materials gathered up, you can thread your beading needle, and we will jump into this tutorial. We'll begin this tutorial by picking up 4 of our SuperDuo beads. And then you want to bring those down to the end of your thread, and you can leave yourself a 4 to 5 inch tail that you'll be weaving in or trimming off. And you're going to take your needle and go back through all 4 of those SuperDuos again through the same hole and pull those together, and you'll need to go through one more to form those into a little loop, just like that. And what I like to do here, since I'm not using a stop bead, is I'm going to go under the thread bridge with my needle, make a loop, and make a half hitch knot right there. I'm going to make several of those. I'm going through the next bead. I'll go through the thread bridge right here, make a loop, go through that and make another knot. And I will go through the next, say, 2 beads. And make one more knot right here, and this time I'll catch that little piece of tail thread. And then I'm just going to trim that down to get it out of the way. Go through your next bead, just like that, and then take your needle and go up through the open hole of that same SuperDuo. So now that you're coming out of the outermost hole that is on the right-hand side of this little plus sign, we can then pick up 3 more SuperDuos, and we're going to expand this into a strip. So we have our 3 on, take your needle, go back up through the SuperDuo, heading in that same direction and pull. And now you can see we've got 2 units sitting side by side. We want to get to the end of this unit to continue to expand on this, and so we're going to go directly through the hole on the next SuperDuo and then down the hole that we get to next on the one that's sitting on the right side, and we'll go up through the open hole of the same SuperDuo so that we're exiting out of this side of our beadwork again. So we're going to continue to do that until we have 7 units of this on our beadwork. So just like we did before, pick up 3 SuperDuos, pull those down, head up through the same SuperDuo that you are currently coming out of. and continue through the next 2 beads. 1, 2, then head up through the open hole of the SuperDuo on the end. Now we have 3 units, we need 4 more. So continue doing this until you have a total of 7. And now that you have 7 units, which you can count by counting just one side of these SuperDuos if you have 7 there, we're going to bring this together, the whole thing, to form a loop. And we're going to essentially be making an 8th and final unit to bring these together. So with my thread coming up out of this SuperDuo at the end, I'll pick up one more SuperDuo. And then the SuperDuo that's at the beginning, I'm going to go down through that one. And we added that just right there. We'll need one more to complete our unit of 4 on this side. And we'll go back up through the SuperDuo that's on the end. And see how that starts to bring these together. And then we'll sew through these 4 just to reinforce that area. And we want to be coming out one of the outer holes of a SuperDuo either at the top or the bottom. So I'm going to step up through this SuperDuo. And we're ready to begin our next step. And this is where we're going to form the bottom of our bezel. So this is going to come together a little bit more. And again, coming out of the outer hole of a SuperDuo. Now we're going to pick up a drop bead and sew through the outer hole of the next SuperDuo. Pick up a Demi, sew through the next SuperDuo. Pick up a 3mm through the next SuperDuo. Demi again, sew through the next. And do that all one more time. So once again, a drop bead, a Demi, a 3mm, and one more Demi. Then sew through the next SuperDuo and continue sewing through all of those beads again as well. So go around that entire loop, including the SuperDuos. It's going to start to cinch up back here and start to look like this. We want to reinforce this section. So go around these beads at least one more time, if not 2. Then come out of a SuperDuo, and this time we want to step up and follow our thread path till we're exiting from the lower hole of a SuperDuo on this outer section. So I'm coming out of this SuperDuo and this hole right here. I'm going to go through the same SuperDuo again, but back through the other hole. Then I'll just follow the thread path. I'll go up this way and then head left so that I'm coming out of one of those holes at this level of our beadwork. And we're going to go around this level now And I'm at the point where I am heading over top of a section with a Demi, and that tells me that I want to pick up a drop bead, a SuperDuo, and a drop bead. So I'll pick those up and then head through the lower hole of the next SuperDuo on that round. Give it a little turn. Now we're over top of a 3mm fire polish. So I'm going to pick up 5 Demis, then head through the lower hole of the next SuperDuo. Now we're back over a Demi again, so we want to do that drop bead, SuperDuo, and drop bead. So through the next SuperDuo. Now we're over a drop bead, and there we're going to pick up 3 Demis. So through the next. And this is where we just repeat. So back over a Demi again, we have our drop bead, SuperDuo, and drop bead. That next section we'll pick up 5 Demis. Drop bead, SuperDuo, and drop bead. And we're at our last section over top of a drop bead. We're going to pick up 3 Demis. And we're going to head through the next SuperDuo. And we can flip this over. So the side where these 2 drop beads at the bottom are kind of sticking out, that is the bottom of our piece. And if you start to pull this tight, you notice how this pulls together a little bit more, and it will cradle our octagonal stone right in there. So you're welcome to just drop that in at this point as we continue on. Before I do that though, I do want to go through that round of beads one more time just to reinforce it. So all the beads that we had just added and the SuperDuos that we went through, just go around those at least one more time. And make sure you don't miss any beads as you go. And I'm going to come out of this SuperDuo up here. And then we are ready to actually turn around in the other direction. And we need to also step up. So I'm going to step up by sewing through the outer hole of that SuperDuo. And I'm going to pull this nice and tight, turn it around a little bit. And we can insert our stone. It's going to sit this way. So where you see the 3 Demis, that's going to be the top and bottom section. And the 5 Demis are going to sit on either side of the longer side of the crystal. At this point, we're going to pick up a 3mm and sew through the next SuperDuo, going through that outer hole. And this is going to sit in front of those Demis. It will come together a little more as we keep going. And these next 3 SuperDuos, we are going to just sew through all of those together. So I'm going through this one. I want to catch the next 2 in those outer holes and just pop that drop bead out so that the 3 SuperDuos come together on the corner of the crystal and the 2 drops are sticking outside. Now in this next section, we're going to pick up a Demi, a 3mm, and a Demi, then sew through the next SuperDuo, outer hole. So again, those beads are going to sit in front of the Demis, and it will be easier as we go. Then we want to pick up the other 2 SuperDuos that we get to, making sure that we pop those drop beads outside of the bezel. and start pulling this all together. So we have one side done, and we need to continue on through the next section, picking up a 3mm and going through the next SuperDuo, placing that at the bottom and in front of the Demis. Then sew through the next 2 SuperDuos with the drop beads on the outside. Pick up a Demi, a 3mm, and a Demi. Sew through the next SuperDuo, and if you can, just go ahead and sew through the next 2 as well. And then tighten that all up and start to pull this together. And you should have something that looks like this. It's still kind of loose, but you have a 3mm sitting at the top and bottom. Your 3 SuperDuos are pulled tight together at each corner. You have a 3mm section on each side. And we're going to continue sewing around these beads again to tighten this up more because it's not tight enough around the crystal yet. So go around that section again at least once more, and really trying to pull this tight as you go and keeping that crystal in place to try to train these beads to really hug onto the front of that crystal. All right, so that's a bit tighter now. And at this point, I'm coming out of this SuperDuo, and I want to change direction, sewing back through the same SuperDuo, but through that other hole. When you get to a section with the 5 Demis, you'll go through the first 2, skip the middle one, then sew through the next 2, and continue sewing through the SuperDuos and Demis in that corner, just as many beads as you can get through at once. That center Demi is going to poke out just a little bit as you pull this tight. Continue sewing in this direction. Through this drop and through the SuperDuo and just the first Demi that you get to in that section of 3. This is where you're going to pick up a drop bead and sew through the middle Demi. Pick up one more drop bead and sew through the third Demi and continue sewing through those corner beads. See, now you've inserted 2 of these at the top or bottom, it doesn't matter which one. And continue going till you get to your next section of 5 Demis. And once again, there, you'll sew through the first 2, skip the one in the middle, and sew through the next 2, and then continue sewing through the beads. And then when you're at the next section of 3 Demis, you'll do the same thing we did down here. You'll pick up a drop bead, sew through the center Demi, pick up a drop bead, and then sew through the third Demi, and continue sewing around. Pop those in place. That's what you should have right now. And then just continue sewing through your beads till you get to the other side. And we will add one more bead in to the top so that it will be easier to add our earring finding and our jump ring. So once again, I'm skipping that middle Demi in this section of 5 as I go around. And just kind of train that to stick out in the center on both of those sides. Have a few more beads to go through. And I want to be coming out of that central Demi in between those 2 drop beads that we had just added. I need to go through that one more drop bead, and then I'm through that center Demi. So I'm coming out right here, and I'm going to add one more Demi bead directly on top of that, and that's going to add a nice spot for us to add our jump ring and then attach our earring finding. So I've picked up a Demi. I'm going around that central Demi again. I'm going to go around it again so that we have a total of 3 times that we've gone around. And then you can continue sewing through the next drop bead. And I'm going to make a half hitch knot right here. My thread is starting to get a little short, so I'm going to go ahead and knot this off because we are pretty much done with this earring at this point. If you find that your beadwork has any areas where it feels a little bit looser or anything, you can of course sew through those areas again to reinforce it a little bit more. I've made 2 knots. I'm going to make a third one right here. And then sew through a couple more beads. And then I'll trim my excess thread. So here's our finished earring without the findings. This is what it should look like. And here's a look at the back and the sides there. Mine's nice and tightly wrapped up and holding that crystal in place. And I'm using the black thread just because it was easier to see, but if you're using these lighter colors, definitely recommend using a lighter color beading thread if you're able to. At this point, we can attach our earring finding. I'm going to just take one of these jump rings. It's like a 5mm size. And I'm going to slip that directly through the Demi that's sitting here at the top. Then add my earring finding, threading it onto the jump ring, and twist this to tighten it back up. I'm going to take my pliers and just make sure that loop is pretty well closed. And now our earring is complete. So you can back up the video and make the other earring so that you have your pair. You could also use this standalone as its own pendant if you want to make one that's slightly smaller than the original Terrarium design, or use this as some other component in your beadwork. And don't forget you can have fun with the color choices as well, not just going with these colors that are in the Orchid Oasis collection, but by checking out all the different things Eureka Crystal Beads has to offer on their site. They've got all these things in a wide range of colors. So that wraps it up for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to give the video a big thumbs up and definitely subscribe while you're here if you haven't already, because I would love to have you back. Don't forget to check out the coordinating terrarium pendant tutorial. I will try to link that in the corner and down below, and also see the links for the Orchid Oasis beading collection that you can still get your hands on, as well as the full list of materials, the quantities, and the links directly to them. Feel free to leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you've given these a try or if you plan to give them a try or anything else you'd like to say. And feel free to share the video with your other beading friends. I'll be back again real soon. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, happy beading.